Welcome to the third installment of our Glen Keane series. In our first, we learned about his work on Ariel, and in our second, we learned about his work on the Beast. Today, we'll take a look at his work on Aladdin, and much, much more. Before we start, don't forget to check out our Discord, our coffee page, and like, subscribe, comment, hit the bell, all the things. It really helps us out. For today's episode, we'll start when Glen was hired out of Cal Arts to work for Disney. Like all of the animators at this time, he began training with Erik Larsen. You already know what I'm gonna say. Click that link here. During this time, Glen Keane found that his sensibilities were quite different from those of his teacher. While Erik was very analytical and always saw what he drew in his head first, Glen was more intuitive and relied on how he felt to have his animation and drawing come into place. Sensei and pupil sort of situation.
I remember having a conversation with Erik Larsen. We were in a little auditorium with all the animators and all the new folks that were at Disney, and we were learning from him. And Erik was explaining, no. In order to animate, first you visualize it clearly in your mind, and then you can draw it. And it's just impulsively, I just felt like, that's not true. And I said, Erik, I don't see it. And he looked at me like, well, of course you see it. And then he continued on, and I wouldn't let him continue on. I said, no, I don't see it in my head. And he had to stop, like, okay, one, how do you draw it if you don't see it in your head? You know, and I was kind of looking at me, and I said, Erik, I don't know, but I can't say I do see something when I don't, and I don't. But he says, well, then how do you draw it? He said, I don't know. It's actually in doing it, it starts to speak to me. By me doing it, I find it. It reveals itself to me. That's how it is for me.
After finishing the training program, Glen started in-betweening and assisting John Pomeroy, who at the time was working under Ollie Johnston. Once John moved up, Glen became Ollie's assistant on The Rescuers. Since the two animated from the heart, they ended up being a good match. By the end of The Rescuers, Keane was a full-fledged animator, and he did some great scenes of Penny. These scenes show great potential because the girl he animates is truly a girl who feels trapped and feels sad. The boldness and passion shown in the eyes and the drawings also give us a bit of a glimpse of what is yet to come. Siri, play Life on Mars by David Bowie. Oh, we don't have the rights. I guess play a clip from The Rescuers then. Glen also animated a scene or two with Bernard, and after The Rescuers, Keane went on to Pete's Dragon, for which he animated Elliot and didn't much enjoy it. During the production of The Fox and the Hound, Glen got his big break, as it was his first time as a supervising animator. There are two scenes he did on Hound that really show the great dynamic power he has as an animator. One is the scene Glen animated where Todd sees Vixie for the first time. The expressions and attitude of the love-stricken fox are so intuitive, and you really identify with the way he's feeling. The second is the bear fight, which is the only scene in the film that gives the audience a little bit of a tilt, as well as an immense feeling of suspense and action. When planning the scene, Keane studied Wolfgang Reitherman's animation of the fight scene in Lady and the Tramp for inspiration. However, as promising as Glen's talent was, times were getting tough for him to flourish. Although he animated scenes for the, and I think I'm pronouncing it right, Black Cauldron? I don't know, we'd never talk about this one. Anyways, none of his scenes made it into the picture, and the directors as well as the producer had no desire for him to work on the film. So, Keane joined the crew of Mickey's Christmas Carol, where he was the lead on Willie the Giant. Then, Glen worked with John Lasseter on the pencil test for Where the Wild Things Are, which was made to show the potential of CG animation. Their plan was to eventually bring this technology to the brave little toaster. Unfortunately, due to the project's expense and some office politics, Lasseter was fired from the studio. Feeling there wasn't a place for him in this environment, Keane left the studio in 1983.
Well, I never felt that I was really a Disney animator. I felt like I was learning and growing, but those words that you're an artist have always meant an enormous amount to me. And so I never felt like, okay, Disney is where I will be for the rest of my life. I didn't look at it that way. I looked at it as, okay, it's got to be asking more from me than I even know how to give, and I need that for me as an artist. And there was, the Black Cauldron was going on. They actually didn't want my suggestions, and that was like, what? Okay, this is kind of weird. And it seemed like suddenly there was nothing there that was demanding something from me. Mm-hmm. It was busy work. And at home, I had our kids, my wife, and there was freelance work because I was making nothing at Disney at that time. Mm-hmm. Really nothing.
I've been there.
Yeah, and I wanted to put in a yard. I wanted grass, and I figured, I know Ron and John. Maybe they'll let me. And I knew that they were working on The Great Mouse Detective. Mm-hmm. Why don't I just quit? And I'll do freelance for Disney, and I'll be home. Then I'll do freelance other things. I'll have enough money, and we'll put in a yard. and there's excitement and thrill, and living on the edge, and driving down the freeway at 3:00 because I've got a meeting with somebody from Apple. Yeah. So I left and worked on Great Mouse Detective.
So your Great Mouse Detective was freelance technically?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Ratigan was an extremely extravagant character with a pretty unique mousy design.
Well, I mean, it was in the character, in the story, he thought that he was a mouse, but he was this huge rat. So he was really trying to be sophisticated. I mean, as if mice are sophisticated. But a big part of the inspiration on him was Vincent Price, who did the voice. And there was a movie called Champagne for Caesar. And Champagne for Caesar, he plays this character that is very sophisticated but is volatile at the same time. And he's very controlled, and you knew that he was going to explode at any moment. And so I recorded all of the dialogue of Vincent Price, and then I did drawings of Ratigan. And it was really Vincent Price's sophistication and air. He's an incredibly intelligent guy, Vincent Price, to meet him. He's an art collector. He's knowledgeable. He's worldly. These are all the things that Ratigan wanted people to think about him. Vincent Price actually had all of that. So you couldn't help but just put it into him the way a gesture would happen. For him to smoke this, Mark Davis always had a cigarette and a cigarette holder. And so he had this kind of air of worldly intelligence, Mark Davis did. And so I brought that into Ratigan. And Ratigan was this skinny little character at the beginning, kind of a rat, and it just wasn't feeling right. And And I had done all these drawings. And then one day, Ron Miller, who was the head of Disney, came walking down the hallway to take a look at what we were doing, Ron and John, myself. And the way Ron would walk, you'd hear this, because he was about 6'7" and about 300 pounds, a big guy, all muscle. And he entered into the room. His presence was huge. And I thought, okay, we've got to design Ratigan like him. And so, I mean, that became the design for Ratigan, was really Ron Miller, who was absolutely gracious, and he knew that he was the rat in the movie.
And much like the rest of The Great Mouse Detective, that is all the content we have for that. Goodbye, so soon, and sorry to our script supervisor, Adam. It's his favorite. Going into Oliver and Company, Glen assumed he would be assigned a character.
But at that time, once again, they didn't really want me on that movie. So I was thinking, well, what am I going to do? And Ross Bagdasarian from Chipmunk's Adventure called and said, would I come over? And I went, all right, well, so I'll do that. And I worked on that for a while. And then The Great Mouse Detective came out, and Charles Solomon wrote some wonderful review and said some wonderful things about me. And Jeffrey Katzenberg, who had become the head of the studio, was reading it. It's like, why isn't that guy here? Mm-hmm. And so he called the director and said, that guy needs to be on this film. And so I ended up coming back to the studio.
And so Glen was cast in the role of Sykes.
Something much better than money. Some luxury items that should make a considerable dent in my debt to you. Oh my, you waxed your car, didn't you? Did they use the buffer on this? Because I can see myself behind.
Oh boy.
Like Ratigan, Sykes is again a heavy villain, but this time he went a different direction by making him very reserved and restrained in his actions and movements. He's always very contained and avoids showing emotion too much, which makes him contrast well to the livelier Fagin. From here, Glen was cast as Ursula for The Little Mermaid, but succeeded in convincing the directors to put him on Ariel. You can learn all about that in this video. And you can learn all about his work on The Beast in this episode. We love links! Following the enormous success of Beauty and the Beast, Keane was put on yet another leading man, Aladdin.
A Disney film has a wide variety of kinds of characters. There's the really broad, cartoony, comic characters. There's the big, dramatic villain. And there's the beautiful heroine. And then there's often the boring hero, the Prince Charming. And nobody ever wanted to animate Prince Charming.
And I say to you, these two work the best together.
One of the challenges with Aladdin is how do you avoid falling into the stereotypical cardboard hero character? And I thought, well, it might be kind of nice if he's not as tall, strapping hero type, but let him be a little guy, you know, have something to really fight against. And at a certain point, Jeffrey looked at it and said, you know, I just don't believe that guy and Jasmine would be together.
I found the character of Jasmine kind of blows him away. I don't understand why she goes with him. I understand why he goes with her. That's easy. She's wonderful.
He's too young, he's too spindly, he's too buff, he's too hard to draw.
So we had a meeting where we had to explain what the new design was and how much work we had to get done.
Unfortunately, that's who we have to draw.
Now, if that's all I did was explain technically what we had to do, I can guarantee we never would have done that picture, because artists don't respond to numbers or charts or even money. You've got to tell them why. You've got to help them understand and get them to start to believe in why you are doing what you're doing. So most of my lectures to our crew would be a kind of a combination, maybe 10% information, 90% inspiration, trying to get them encouraged to actually go and do this.
On the outside, he's a really confident guy, but somewhere deep inside, he's insecure.
I think Ron and John liked the direction of going with a smaller approach to Aladdin. And so then when Jeffrey came in and said, no, we want to make him more of a hero type, so he looks like he can get that girl. Ron and John didn't want to give up on this very youthful, expressive, kind of boyish sort of a quality to him.
One of the things that inspired me the most with Aladdin was Hammer's "You Can't Touch This" video. I felt like, well, Aladdin has got to have that kind of spark.
After that, the gun went off and we just went running full speed to the finish line. And amazingly, somehow it got done. I couldn't, I think of it back now, and it's a good thing I was in my, I guess my early 30s, because like right now, I don't know if I'd had that kind of energy to work those kind of hours that we did. I guess I didn't know what I was really up against at that point. Even though I looked calm and controlled at that, in the meeting, I probably, in my head, was running around screaming.
From here, he worked on Pocahontas, Tarzan, and he spent a very long time on Rapunzel. This last one was a huge success, but Keane was feeling restless at Disney and eventually decided to leave.
It was such a scary thing, just like you're saying. Just like in a drawing, I can't see the picture in my head. Some people can. Milk Call could. I can't. And I still can't. But I do have that faith. I do have the hope. And I count that as even more important than seeing. Leaving was like that. I had no idea what was coming. Linda, who's my partner in courageous steps in life, including getting married to her, and she could see I was restless, and she said, well, Glenn, what would you do if you weren't at Disney? Where would you go? I said, I don't know. Google? She said, Google?
Sorry.
Don't do animation. I said, I know, but isn't that what it's about? Taking what you know and going somewhere where they don't do it? I mean, I want that. Of course, that I left Disney, I had no idea that could possibly happen. Immediately, it seemed to be about Paramount and them starting the studio, and that seemed like, no, this is wrong. I would wake up at 4 a.m, I'd walk down to the gate of Paramount and look there and just think, is this why I left to do this? It's like, this is not right. No. So I said, no, I'm not going to do that. But, the clock is ticking, nobody's paying your bills, and you're wondering what's going to happen. Well, the next thing, Google calls.
We had a guys' night out with John Cars, Doug Sweetland, Rodrigo Blas, and myself down in Venice Beach. We had dinner there, and Doug Sweetland was just talking about this animation he was doing for this interactive device, and it was this virtual world, and it's like, what the heck are you talking about, Doug? He's like, well, you got to see it. I mean, and maybe you would be good at doing this. Maybe you should do it. And so before I knew it, I'd been invited up by Jan Pinkova up to meet Regina Dugan, who headed up a research division up at Google called ATAP. And it was a pretty amazing place. And they showed me this device that Jan had directed Windy Day, this short little film. And at first I thought, well, that's a really tiny looking screen. Yeah. Why do I want to?
It's a little phone, right? Yeah, it's on a phone.
Why would I want to trade in the big movie screen for that? And then the more I looked at it, I realized, well, it's not a screen at all. It's a window into an infinite world. It's the largest screen you could possibly have. And very intimate, and it's in your palm of your hand. And you've got the freedom to turn and look and follow the characters wherever they go. I said to Regina, well, Regina, what do you want me to do with this? And she said, we just want you to make something beautiful and emotional.
Wow. Oh, they were talking to the right guy.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I was like, okay, yeah, but I don't really believe that. I mean, so what are you selling? And, so what's the catch?
It was really about how do you compress data is what they were going to get out of it. And pencil lines had, who knew, the most data crunching potential, or challenge because of all the little tiny, like a star field of graphic dust that they had to track every drawing. There were no vectors to it that you could predict.
But I did have to come up with an idea. And it's funny. I mean, you dream of that and suddenly it's there. After I left Google up in the Silicon Valley, I came back to Lake Arrowhead, where we have a house, a studio up there. And for 3 weeks, I started to develop an idea. And what you were saying, Tony, about, the freedom, I did feel freedom at the beginning. And I started to develop these ideas, and I followed kind of the prescribed path for developing an idea. By the end of 3 weeks, I was so lost. I felt so worthless and stupid and like, why is everybody else able to do this and not me? Max said, well, Dad, when was the last time you just animated just for the sheer joy of just animating? Yeah. I'm thinking, man, I don't know. That was a long time ago, like 10 years ago. Because, I worked on little pieces here and there, but he said, I would think you should just animate and not worry about whether it's going to be good for Google or anybody else. Just do it. And he said, I just personally would really like to see what it is. It's funny how you need your son to tell you something that you know already, that you need permission. Yeah. But I did that. I just started animating, and immediately the well just started pumping duet up. I knew that I'd been thinking about the birth of a child and the purpose of life, the design of every human being. And I started animating this baby crawling, and pretty soon, I'm calling Max and Jenny, come up here. We've got 1 week. I got to present this to Google to show them what we're doing. I need your help. Come up. They came up, and the ideas just started rolling, flowing. At one point, I looked over, and Max had taken some of my drawings, and he said, what do you think of this? And I looked, and he'd taken the line, and he'd floated it off the page and put an atmosphere around it, and it was light, and yet all the graphite, it was sparkling with energy, and I was like, gosh, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. We've got to this is the way we're going to do this.
From here, he has continued to work on outside projects, most recently Over the Moon, which we will talk about next time. That's right, 4 episodes for Keane. There's just so much to talk about. Plus, his first episode was one of our firsts on the channel and was very short. So let's make up for that with more episodes. We know we have some Keane heads out there too, so, we got to appease the fans. Thank you to these people for supporting us on Patreon and Ko-fi. And if you want to make sure this channel sticks around, you can check out our Ko-fi link in the description. Every bit helps. Thank you for watching this episode of Discographies. Click the thumbs up button below if you liked it. And if you want to be notified when the next episode comes out, consider subscribing and hitting the bell. Comment below with characters you would like to see us cover. Further reading and references are linked below. We hope to see you in another Discography.